Okay, on Friday I went to see Ryan Coogler's movie Sinners that everybody was talking about. This movie freaked me out. I will not be going to see this movie again. I had a really weird experience that I've been trying since Friday. It is Sunday to put it into words. And I will try to use this video to put it into words to my audience right now. So bear with me, everybody. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Nomadic Kitty, aka Kiki. Now, normally on my channel, I do K-pop and Korean history and stuff like that. But every once in a while, may do a book review or a movie review. But 9 times out of 10, I don't. But I feel like for Sinners, I had to come on. I have to do this video, so y'all just bear with me. This will be spoilers in this video. So if you've not seen the movie Sinners, you're gonna get spoiled. This deals with, my video is going to talk about racial relations in a respectable way. If that makes you uncomfortable, click out, go away. Like, this is a grown folks conversation, so this is for the adults in the room. This is mostly for the Americans, no matter what race you are, and just the people who are maybe curious about American history. We're going to talk about that too. But I will tell you why this movie freaked me out. I will tell you why that I understand why some people were standing up in the theater talking about, oh my God, like people were having a moment, and I'll give you my theory. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment below after the video, and I'm going to try to make this video as concise as possible. It is Sunday. I saw this movie on Friday, and I was still trying to get my mind right to put my feelings into words to come to you today. So I'm going to try to convey this as possible. So let me go back to the beginning. There's a movie called Sinners that came out almost like 3 weeks ago by a writer, producer by the name of Ryan Coogler. If you do not know who Ryan Coogler is, he also did Black Panther. That is what he's mostly known for, the Marvel movies, Black Panther. But he's done other movies. He's done the Creed movies, if you're familiar with those too. And so Sinners is an original movie. It's not a remake. It's not based on a comic book or anything like that. It's not, and it's a movie about two brothers who are from Mississippi. And they, at one time off screen, went to Chicago and made a lot of money and did a bunch of things. And we're interested to hear that backstory. But they go to Chicago and they come back to their hometown, a small town named Clarksdale. Y'all forgive me with the names, okay? So the brothers are twins, played by Michael B. Jordan. Smoke and Stack. They're twins. One of the twins is kind of pragmatic and grumpy like me, and the other twin is much more lighthearted and much more funny, and much more, exuberant. So it's like, but they're played brilliantly by Michael B. Jordan. And then they come back to Mississippi and they open up a juke joint. A juke joint is basically like a 1930s, early turn of the century version of a nightclub where they serve alcohol. They have music there. They have singers. People can hang out. Sometimes juke joints would serve food. And a lot of times people, especially in the African-American community, would take a barn or buy a property of land or an old home and buy it and turn it into a juke joint. So basically a country nightclub. So that's what they plan to do. Their dream is to open up a juke joint and make some money. And so they come back and then they open up and everything's good. They're reconnecting with people, and then they get the attention of a vampire. And that's how it proceeds. That's the gist of it. So it's about them fighting off this vampire, and he's turned other people. And so about them surviving until dawn. So that's the basic gist. That's just a basic, bare bones, basic general gist of this movie. But it is so much more. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of my backstory, okay, which is odd. My family is from Mississippi. From a small town called Brandon, Mississippi. My family is from Mississippi on mostly my mother's side. So we're going to talk about my mother's side of the family. And I'm not going to get into details. I've done genealogy. I've done his historical background. If you want to hear more about my family, I will tell you more about my family. I'll be glad. However, my family, I've said it before on my channel before, even in my channel description, my family has been in the music industry for decades, since the 30s, since the 40s. I have a relative by the name of Lefty Bates. If you do not know who Lefty Bates is, he is a blues musician. Preacher Boy reminds me a lot of my relative Lefty Bates. It reminds me. Music runs deep in my family. You would think I'd be a musician, but I'm not. I'm an artist, like digital art, drawing art, sculpting. So are my kids. However, my son does take guitar lessons. So music and art runs in my family. Sorry, iced coffee. I gotta take a sip. The blues run strongly as themes and centers also in my family. My family consists of session musicians that have played for Motown. My family consists of blues singers. My family consists of gospel singers. I have cousins that sing with Kurt Franklin and in world-renowned gospel choirs and circles. If you knew some of my family, some of my family are married to, if you are familiar with the Winans family. Some of them are married to them. If you know what the situation with Marvin Sapp, talking about lock the doors, lock the people in the church, that's actually one of my relatives. So my family is steeped, has a side of them that is secular music, and another side that is religion. So I can identify on a family history level with Preacher Boy. I could just imagine my great-grandfather. Wait, hold on. My great-grandfather, who is like the big head honcho in my family, started churches all over Mississippi. He was a traveling preacher. And he is steeped. So half of my family is steeped in the church. And then the other half of my family is steeped in the secular with music. So that is the dichotomy of my family, which very reflects sinners, about Preacher Boy having to make a decision. He said, boy, you going to give up that guitar? You going to come to the Lord, boy? You going to give up that guitar? And so that reminded, that was like, I see Preacher Boy like as in my family. Like there's a lot of preacher boys in my family. And again, still in my family to this day, people making a decision to not follow the gospel and go to the secular. So that was interesting. My family, like I said, they're from a small segregated town in Mississippi. That's where we were enslaved at. That's where we were tenant farmers at. Sinners talks about them the black folks in 1930 working on plantations still as tenant farmers. Look it up. I'm not going to get into the historical, things about tenant farming. Was basically people living and working on a plantation for wages. And they didn't really give them wages. They would give them notes to go use at the store that run by the plantation owner. So it wasn't real money. They couldn't take the money anywhere else. They wouldn't pay them in money. They would pay them in credit at the store or notes at the store where they would buy their goods and services, and they would give them these things that look like money. That's why when they were talking about that the people from the plantations weren't paying them in real money, they were paying them in plantation money. A lot of places around the world, but I said particularly in the United States, particularly after slavery, would pay people this way. So just in case some people may watch the movie and be confused and be like, that's not real money. No, it's not real money. It's money to where you can't go nowhere. You can't go nowhere because it's not real money. So that went on. Like I said, without getting into that happened to my family. So that was one thing. I was like, wow. And so the way the town looked, the way the church looked, something about that really stirred something crazily in my body. And yes, the beautiful scenery of Sinners gave me like a visceral reaction. Like, I don't know if it was like Ancestral, maybe. And let me preface this by saying, I'm not a woo-woo person. Like, when I say woo-woo, I mean like woo. I'm an atheist. I do not believe, I'm not a God-fearing person. I don't go to church. I don't believe in organized religion. I do have a side of me that is kind of like a person who believes in the metaphysical, maybe the spiritual, earth, root, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But I am not a woo-woo person. I'm not about the woo-woo. I respect anybody's religious beliefs. Anybody beliefs, I respect you, but I'm not a woo-woo. But we're going to get into the woo-woo. So speaking of the woo-woo, we're going to talk about Annie. Now, let me say some few things. Some people were sitting there saying that people in the movie thought that Annie, I forgot which twin she was with, Michael B. Jordan played twin, that they thought she was his mama. There's no way in hell I thought this actress was his mother. As somebody who's 5'9", who 5'9", who got tiggle bitties and built like Annie, I have family members that are built like her, and her beautiful face. That there's no way I thought that this woman was his mama. I read that I saw videos of people like, she looked like his mama. She don't look like his mama. She built like a grown, cornbread fed, thick Southern woman. That's the stock that I come from. I'm not a big girl, but I'm tall. The actress, I forgot her name. She's a little top heavy. I'm a little top heavy. I'm thick. I'm a thick sister. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like a size 12. So I'm not like some skinny little petite. Like, the idea that they thought that this beautiful black woman was his mama, when Michael B. Jordan and what is her name? Winnie Winatu. I forgot. I'm not going to butcher her name. The actress. I'm a big fan of her. She was in, she's been in Marvel. When she was in Loki. I like, there's no way I thought that this was his mother. Like, no. Like, just the way that he walked in and the chemistry between them, you could tell that they were former lovers. And so it's the fact that some people even had the audacity to say that this, I'm just like, okay, y'all, I'm like, y'all must not see a lot of black women, or I don't know where y'all living at. I'm in Texas, baby. Like, that's just the way they be corn fed and built like that. Now, like I was insulted. I'm like, that's not his mama. I'm like, that's his woman. Like, they had a baby together. So he was there to visit the baby. And so Annie, the character Annie, she does what they call root work. Okay? That I identified with that as well. My family, yes, they churchy. They steeped in religion and stuff like that. Like, they're Pentecostals. So you know how I go. A lot of y'all know what I mean. My Pentecostals are kind of like kind of more of a conservative religious sect of religion with black folks. Black Pentecostal church, y'all. Okay. So, but people understand that in our family, we also have people that believe in God, that do root work. And really, it was Annie who saved them. The thing about the garlic and all that, it was Annie who's like, how Annie knew about vampires, I'm not really quite sure, but she knew about them. So I don't know if this is something that, that was heard, but Annie did root work, and that connected with me as well, because I was like, my great grandmother was supposedly a root worker. My grandmother used to tell me stories about her mother and her grandmother, all kinds of things, putting things in people's shoes, things with chicken bones, reading chicken bones. Like, some of y'all hear this and be like, yeah, my grandmother too, or my mama told me that too, or my great grandmother talked about that. All that, I used to think it was crazy. My grandmother tell me this stuff. I was like, grandmama, you crazy. Like, what? Like, I didn't know what that was. Okay. I thought my grandmother made some stuff up, but as I got older and I started to hear other people talk about, people are like, oh, that's root work. I didn't know what that was. My grandmother was telling me, I mean, my grandmother would do all kinds of things with cat bones and chicken bones and putting drops of stuff in people's shoes. And my grandmother tell me that her grandmother had people would come and pay her to put love spells on people, to discover, truths about people, whether they were cheating or not. A lot of the women would come to my great grandmother for help. And again, I thought all this stuff was crazy. When my grandmother was telling me this, I was 9-10 years old. I thought this was all some magical, mystical, fantastical witchcraft. I didn't know what it was. And I just like, oh, my grandmother, but she making up stories. And I realized my grandmother was not making up stories. The love of the metaphysical and the spiritual runs deep in my family. It is something that I have learned that it is genetic. It is something that is genetic. I've had psychic readings when I was younger. I was really into psychics and tarots and stuff when I was younger. And people would tell me, like, you have shamans, you have spiritual people in your family, you have this in your lineage, Kiki, you have this in your family. I got away from it. I was like, this is craziness. I still have a little interest in it, but now I see down to my children. My children, my son in particular, has inherited an interest that I have not told my son anything about my family history, anything about anything. But my son is keenly interested in psychics and past lives, all the stuff I was interested in at 15. The weirdest thing. Like, I didn't tell my son about none of this. He went out and sought this stuff on his own when he turned 12. So that just tell you, when I'm watching Sinners, that sometimes I can't explain it. Like, I don't have any explanations for a lot of things. And I understand there are things that are unseen in this world, and I'm not as arrogant to believe in, like, science. I believe in science, but I also believe that there are things that have yet to be seen and unseen, yet to be discovered, that we don't understand our planet, we don't understand our earth, we don't understand a lot of things. And whether there's a scientific explanation for that, maybe. Is there ancestral memories? Is that a real thing? Maybe. But anyway, so you get into the movie Sinners, I had that kind of feeling. So when Smoking Stack went to Chicago and came back, I felt some type of way about that, because my family fled the South, went to the North, and had a better experience in the North, but just a different experience. And so Smoking Stack, they was talking about, they were like, people were asking, why would you go to Chicago and then come back here? You know, here we had a Klan, we had a KKK here and all this kind of stuff in Mississippi. And they were like, it's better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And they were like, there's not much difference between Chicago and Mississippi, except, you know, they have, you know, skyscrapers and big buildings. And that was kind of like my family's experience as well. So you can understand that, like, I'm watching this going, okay. Again, this movie is like a love letter to my family. I really feel like I need to talk to Ryan Coogler. I don't know, maybe I'm not the only person that feels it, but I'm like, I need to talk to Ryan Coogler. Like, have you been in my family tree? Have you been in my family history? Like, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm watching this dumbfounded. Because I'm like, this is kind of like somebody took elements of my family history and broke it down into different characters. That's like how I felt, for real. So yeah, I don't know what, you know, Ryan Coogler, I was like, I need to talk to him. Like, I don't know Ryan Coogler. I don't know. It just seems very odd and very suspicious, Ryan Coogler. So, I don't know. So, the root work part of it was interesting. Let's see, what other elements? And then, Delroy Lindo definitely deserves an Academy Award for his performance. He was funny. He was edgy. He told a story about working on the chain gang. They showed him the chain gang, about how he ended up in the chain gang and how his friend was actually lynched. That is an interesting backstory I would love to hear. But Delroy Lindo, I mean, he deserves a Academy Award nomination for his part, even though he's not, you know, he's in the movie, but it's not a huge part, but his acting was, I mean, superb. So then we got into Annie, which is one of the twins' love interests. So we get into Mary. Now, there's been things that have been said about Mary that I object to as well. Because apparently Mary was a mulatto. Like, she said that her grandfather was half black. And people are like, well, was she really black? Let me clear up some things and offer my opinion. For somebody who sat in that theater and look at Haley Steinfeld and saw her grandmother, because my grandmother, that's what she looked like. I'm gonna say it for the people in the back. Mary look like my kin. That's how light my kin is. And so some people are like, well, was she really black? Her grandfather was black. It like, when you get into racial stuff, like especially back in the turn of the century, during slavery days, let me tell y'all something. It's a blur. It's a blur. Because Mary talked about her mom had take care of the twins Smoking Stack when they were little. Like, so they all Mary and the twins all kind of grew up together. So there's a backstory with Mary's family as well, because as to how Mary's mom was able to take care of the twins, because I believe they said that their mama died, that their mom died when they were younger. And so if she was a whole ass white woman in Mississippi, how was she able to take care of the twins and raise her child? So I'm assuming that her mother, that Mary's mom, grew up on the black side of town and the black side in order for her to take care, because ain't no white woman would get away with taking care of these two black boys. So I'm assuming, I can read between the lines, which a lot of people didn't, that obviously Mary was raised to blend through the color line. And we don't know who Mary's father was. She never talked about her dad. Her dad could have been a mixed race man. Her dad could have been a white man. We don't really know. We don't know what happened with Mary's mother. And again, that's a story that needs to be told as well. As somebody who has a mother who, a grandmother who could blend in, and when I talked about my great-grandparents and families, these are not people that have my skin tone. My family is very much, on my mom's side of the family, especially my grandmother's side of the family, are all very light-skinned people. If you go back and look at the census, it says a lot of my great-grandfather, great-grandmother, it says mixed race. And so the fact that people out here calling Mary a white woman, I'm like, wait a minute. My great-great-grandmother looked like a white woman, but she identified as a black woman. My great-great-great-uncle had a wife that people in town thought was white. And they ran them out of town because people in the town thought he was married to a white woman, a beautiful white woman. And the white men in this town wanted my great-great-great-uncle's wife. And they chased him out of town, y'all. He ran for his life with his wife and kids because these racists wanted his wife. She would go to town and they would think she was a white woman. They would see them together and think she was a white woman. She's like, I'm not a white woman. And that's the same thing that happened to my great-grandmother, who was very light, bright, and nearly white. And they thought my great-grandfather was married to a white woman. And she's not. She identified as a black woman. She was a mixed race woman. And so the idea that Mary living in Mississippi could easily blend between the color line, y'all are missing the entire plot. And so they have a conversation, her and the twin that Mary had a relationship with. Because Mary's upset because her mom died and she feel like they didn't come back, or they said they did send flowers, and then she feel like she was abandoned by him, that she loved him and was abandoned by him. I knew that Haley Steinfeld is part black. Like, that's a conversation. Haley Steinfeld's father is Jewish and her mother is Filipino and black. So that's something that a lot of people didn't know. That's something that I've been knew. I've been knew this for a long time. I looked her up a long time ago when she was in Bumblebee and realized she was a mixed race woman. And because Haley Steinfeld, again, when she was little, she looked like one of my cousins. I said, Haley Steinfeld? I said, who is that? I saw her in Bumblebee. I said, she kind of like one of my cousins. So I looked her up. And I was like, oh, that's why she looked like one of my cousins. So I've been knew Haley Steinfeld was mixed, had black in her. And so that opens the conversation of who's black and what's black. In Mississippi, apparently the character Mary married a white husband. And he said, I set you up to marry this white husband to save you, to get her out. Because he knew that if he was going to be with Mary, that there would be trouble. And he understood that. And again, that had me have a surreal, visceral feeling, because I thought back to my ancestors who were with light-skinned women and light-skinned men themselves. So these men, my great-grandfather and his brothers and sisters were all light. They weren't as light as my great-great-grandmother, but they were all very fair-complected people. My family history is full of that. But they were on the black side of Brandon, Mississippi. They were tenant farmers. But you know, like I said, the color line in Mississippi and in the South period was a vicarious thing. Like it was a thing where a lot of people passed. I have family members, you know, great great uncles and aunts who disappeared from my family tree. And from what I heard, that they my grandmother would be like, they passed. And I was like, they died? And then she like, no. They decided to go past as something else. Some of them claim to be Native American. Some of them claim to be Creole. Some of them claim to be Spanish. Some of them moved to Louisiana and claim to be quote unquote Creole, which is just light-skinned black a lot of times. I know some of y'all are going to argue it's French and Indian or whatever. Look, unless you got a damn DNA test, don't tell me what you are. Because I know a lot of people that think that they're French and they're Indian and Spanish, and it come back that they just straight African descent, continent, sub-Saharan descent. You on Ancestry, then you know what I'm talking about. So don't tell me about the color line in the United States. Don't tell me I'm Creole and I'm Indian, I'm this and this, unless you've had a damn DNA test. Don't tell me. Because whatever your family tells you, they can tell you whatever you want to believe. You want to believe you're Italian and whatever. Okay. Like, because people lied back in the day. The only proof is DNA. The proof is in the DNA. So I would tell people that you walking around thinking you white, you Caucasian, you ain't had no DNA test, baby. You don't know what you are. Because people back in the day lied to blend in. They lied. They lied. A lot of people, you couldn't even tell by looking at them what they really were. So with Mary, I'm like, to say that she's not black, I'm like, it sounded like she was raised around in black spaces, like she was raised as a black person, that she herself have jumped the color line, not her family, but maybe she did. Maybe her mom wavered on it a little bit, but it sounded like Mary herself jumped the whole color line, and not really her lineage and her family. Like, it seems like she was raised around black folks for a long time. So that's why I got to say about Mary that it was interesting, because I'm like, Mary looks like my grandmother. My grandmother was a proud black woman. So can nobody tell me my grandmother wasn't black, baby. No way, shape, and form. Nobody can tell anybody what they are. So yes, the discussion about Mary is a discussion that, like I said, I've seen a lot of places, and then a lot of people have not lived it. And also for me, as a person that has biracial children, is the other thing. My children identify as black. My kids are biracial. Triracial, to be honest with you. My kids are 3 races, quote unquote races, whatever that means. Okay, because race is a construct. It's something that's made up. I hope y'all realize that the race is just made up by people in power to control people. But I guess if you want to say race is quote unquote, my kids are triracial. So there are 3 different races in one. And so my kids firmly identify as black people because America forces them to choose a side. Once we leave these shores and we go live somewhere else, depending on where you live and where you stay internationally, you could be anything. You could be colored in South Africa. You could be white in Brazil. My kids will be considered white. My kids are real. My kids will go to Spain and be Spanish. They'd go to Portugal and be Portuguese. So race is not this set in stone thing, even in America, but especially in the world. People would look at you and just by your physical appearance and make a determination about what race or nationality you're supposed to be. And then depending on their experiences and where they're at, my kids can blend in pretty much anywhere. Like, they could be Arabic, they could be Spanish, they could be half black and half Japanese. Like, people have thought that they were Asian. Like, my kids look racially what they call racially ambiguous. So I tell people, it's how you were raised that identifies you of what you are. It's how you were raised. It's your cultural heritage, not your racial heritage. I know some white people that were raised by black people that are blacker than regular black, because that's the cultural heritage they grew around with. Like, the world sees them as one thing, but they're like, my parents are black. I have a black mom. Like, I know someone who was adopted by black people, and they identify as a black person. They married a black person. They cook, they learn how to cook black food. So if you're talking about cultural heritage, that can be picked up by people. It's not, that's something that can be picked up. So, those discussions are hard to have, but Very necessary. But that's what I think about, the situation with Mary. And so also the elements, let's talk about the vampire Remick and where in his backstory that I really want to hear. Some people were confused. Remick said he's been around for 1,200 years, that he's been around a long time. So the questions about Remick is, if you know the history of the Irish and the black people, very fascinating. There's YouTube videos, fascinating. The history of the Irish and the English, how the English came and conquered the Irish lands. And Remick was saying that, they brought this religion on us too. Ireland was not a Christian nation. The English that came and colonized them and brought their religion. The people Irish, they worship, not worship, but did more of the same type of religions that are native indigenous religions. Remick was being hunted by some clean dressed ass Native Americans. Okay, them Native Americans was clean, y'all. They had the hats on, they had the outfits on. I said, oh, look at them. And the outfits that they were wearing, I have a curiosity because I have very little Native American in me, just enough to be dangerous. But I was curious about the outfits that they were wearing. I was like, is this a particular tribe? Is this ceremonial outfits? Because they was on Remick's ass. So there's theories about how the Native Americans ended up, hunting him down. And maybe Remick tried the same thing he did with the people at the juke joint that he with the Native Americans. I think my theories about Remick is that I think Remick was another person that performed music, and maybe he was turned into a vampire. I think he was like Preacher Boy. I think he had a gift of music, of drawing people in with his music. And I think that it's something rare that there's people all over, like they were saying in the beginning of the first beginning of Sinners, the movie, they talk about people having a connection with the spiritual, how music is used to like basically thin the veil between worlds, that sometimes music calls to people. And maybe Remick was like Preacher Boy, that maybe he was out there in Ireland in the 1400s, and he was, maybe he was a druid, maybe he was out there singing his songs and doing his Irish thing, and maybe that attracted a vampire to him or to his tribe of people and turned them into vampires. So that's my headcanon. I think that Remick was like Preacher Boy. I think he was somebody who had an affinity for music and the metaphysical. And I think that Remick was drawn to him and perhaps been drawn to other people. Maybe the Native Americans were out there doing their singing and their chanting and their thing, and Remick was drawn to somebody in their tribe that had this gift. I think Remick had the gift of music, and I think that he was drawn to find somebody else like him and others like him, maybe all over the world, maybe all over the country. Maybe he's been searching all over the world for different people. And maybe he's trying to gather up all of these people that are kind of like, sirens with their music. And you can see the power, the undercurrent of Sinners. One of the undercurrents is the power of music, and how music is strong. And people have said this, music can transcend your mind. Music has touched people. Music can make you cry, make you happy. And so when we get to the part in the movie where where Preacher Boy is singing his song, the part in the movie is masterful. So I encourage anyone to go see the movie. But that part had an unexpected reaction. That part in the movie made me cry. Like, I just started crying. I don't know why. I just started crying. Music is a big part of my family. And I just started crying. I have no idea why I started crying. I gotta let some air in, y'all. Sorry. I can't explain it. But that part made me cry. And then, like I said, I thought about Remick, and after I got over my cry, after that part ended, and I was like in the movie theater, like tears. And I'm not a crier. I don't cry over nothing. I don't know why I was crying. I don't know why like I said, this movie, it freaked me out. I had a weird reaction to all of this. And so when Remick was talking about the Irish, and again, I respect the Irish. Irish people, not Irish Americans, when they come here but when the Irish came here and the Italians came here, they were not white. They were considered other. No Irish, no dogs, no Mexicans, no Jews, all of that. The Irish went through it. The Irish stop going through it when they decide to assimilate and become Anglo-Saxon, white, Caucasian people. But if you go over to Ireland, they have a different cultural experience. So I tell people, there's a difference between Asian Americans and Asians. There's a difference between Irish Americans and the ones from Ireland. There's a difference between Italians and Italian Americans. There's something about America that have you mofos over here fighting. People are like, oh, the immigrants, da, da, da. You go to Mexico, them people understand. They don't have no feelings about no black folks like that. They come here to America and they feel like in order to get ahead, you have to step on the black people. That people are warning them, oh, leave them black people alone. Or they see things on TV and music and movies, and that's a whole nother conversation. And they think that that's an accurate portrayal of black people because in this country, we are very segregated, whether people want to believe it or not. People worship with their own race. They break bread mostly with their own race. They mostly live around their own race. That's just the truth. They go to school with a lot of times their own race. There are areas out there that are very diverse and stuff like that. But for the most part, 75% of white people don't know no black people, don't know no immigrants, don't know nobody else a different race. So a lot of the immigrants come here and they assimilate. They get rid of their culture, they get rid of their language, they change their names because they feel like in order to get ahead, they have to go along to get along. And so that speaks of Sinners as well, has an undercurrent of that as well. That Remick was from somewhere else. But to me, Remick kind of had a point. He was like, I'm not racist. I'm not one of the Klan. Like, the Klan is really your enemy, not me. Like, even though I'm a blood-sucking vampire, that the Klan was really their enemy. And he's like, I don't know what Remick was offering was right, but that's another conversation that needs to be had about who was the real enemy in the movie. So then we get on, if you want to talk about other people, we talk about the Chinese in Mississippi. The Chinese in Mississippi is really, really a thing. And so it is like a thing. It's a historical thing. There's a YouTuber that did a whole thing about it years ago. There's books written about the Chinese that came to the Mississippi Delta. And Grace's character and her with her husband, I found that very fascinating. Like I said, the part where everybody's dancing, they had indigenous, they had rap. Like it's the scene and the dancing in Sinners, like I was saying, it made me cry. But then also to see like the Chinese heritage there as well was very fascinating. So I have to say again, lastly, this is what I have to say, that the whole movie, I could do video after video about this movie, but the whole movie again affected me in a visceral way that I truly did not understand. Like I said, there are elements to this movie that is very much my family history. The root work, the sharecropping on a tenant farm, the blues music, the religion, about Preacher Boy and his fight with his, not a fight, but with his father in religion. The twins going to up north, because my family went up north. These are all elements of what happened to my family. And also it was a treaty on historical. Like I said, I didn't bring up the fact with Grace, with the family, the Asian family, how they had a white store on the white side of the town and then a black store on the black side of town, and how she just went from one store, how because she was Asian, they were able to set up businesses for the black people and for the white people. Because they were, and that happened to a lot of Jewish people, that happened to a lot of Irish people, a lot of other people that weren't born and raised there. A lot of immigrants came to this country and they set up businesses on both sides of town, whether it be on the black side of town or white side of the town during segregation. That is a real historical thing that happened. That's a real historical thing that happened in my family. Like my family ancestors, they had like a little general store that was on the black side of town, and then right next to them was a store owned by some Jewish people that they sold something different. I think they sold like hardwares, and then one of my relatives sold like just mostly food. And so they had a working relationship with the Jewish people that were next to them, because they were on the black side of town. Because the Jewish people, they couldn't really go to the white side of town because they didn't like them either. They didn't like the Jewish people either. So you could see this, and then people have had conversations about, like, the immigrants in our communities and stuff like that. And to me, it's a moot point because, again, United States, whether people like it or not, is a nation of immigrants. The only people that are here, that belong here, really, is my Native American ancestors. That's the only, my Native American brothers and sisters. Y'all are the only people that really, this is really their land. Everybody else is here either because of immigration or being enslaved. That's just real talk. So the idea that, like, okay, I can't go hate on somebody being an immigrant or something, that they want to improve themselves, because that's kind of like what America was founded. Not kind of, that is what America was founded on. Those people came from England and came over here and did terrible, awful, horrible things. But they didn't belong here either. They didn't belong here either. And that's a conversation that need to be had. But that's for another video another time. But Sinners puts in the undercurrent of that as well, because Remick was Irish. He spoke with a southern drawl, but he dropped that. And you can hear his Irish. And the guy who played Remick, I can't look. Remick was a good villain. He was funny. He was charismatic. He kind of had a point. He was trying to offer some kind of racial utopia, and that's a whole nother conversation that needed to be had. Was Remick really offering them something good? But then it was kind of symbiotic. Like, it seems like whenever Remick turned them into a vampire, he also absorbed their memories and their language and everything like that. So that speaks of Remick being also a culture vulture. So it wasn't like they were voluntarily sharing their memories and culture with Remick. He was turning them into a vampire and then taking their language, their music. Well, language and culture. He couldn't take their music, though. I thought that, did y'all notice that Remick could not take their music? He can only transform you into something else. And it seems like Remick can compel people to do things and has some sort of quasi-symbiosis relationship, but the people were still their own people with their own memories. And apparently maybe they could hear and see everybody else's memory. So it's kind of like a hive mind, like a symbiotic hive mind, like an insect. So really maybe vampirism in Ryan Coogler's world is kind of like a parasite, and not like, you're losing your soul. So was Remick born that way? Or did somebody change him? Did he come from a tribe of vampires that maybe he escaped, that maybe the English came and converted him to Christianity and like, y'all got to go? I don't know. That's, like I said, that's a story only Ryan Coogler could tell. But Remick was very fascinating to me. And the symbolism behind that, of him offering some sort of racial utopia. And then kind of like in the back of your mind, you're going, well, he kind of had a point. But also, I'd have to say about Sinners is that the brothers were doomed, period. That the whole thing was doomed. They bought this barn off this racist KKK member, and he was going to come back and kill them all. And Remick was telling them, well, he's going to come back and kill you all. Like, that was the whole plan. So the utopia and the peace that Smoke and Stack were looking for didn't exist in the South. Didn't exist. Their wanting and nostalgia for coming back home, to me, kind of bit them in the butt. So that is another conversation that needs to be had about leaving and then coming back. And then sometimes that you leave for a reason. And that maybe if Smoke and Stack, maybe Chicago didn't work out for them, maybe they could have went and forged their way out west or someplace different, and then started their fortunes or had a business somewhere else. But they decided to come back home, and that says something very profound as well, especially about Black people. That my baseline in Sinners was that sometimes you're not safe nowhere. Sometimes you just have to keep moving. Sometimes you have to leave things and people behind in order to forge a new path. That was a part of Sinners I figured out as well. So the whole movie for me, I was emotional and I cried through this movie. It's a vampire movie, but it was more than that. I cried, I felt emotional, and I did not understand why. And I'm still to this day trying to grapple with this movie, about that this movie to me was like the ancestors were reaching through the screen and I felt like my grandmother, who like I said was born and raised in Mississippi, was reaching through this movie and squeezing me. And I don't know what they're trying to tell me. I don't know what they were trying to convey. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And I may never figure it out. But this movie had me emotionally, it's like, I can describe it as like, when you go to high school or college and you go back to your high school or college and you see the inside, you see your old locker. You know how you kind of have like that kind of a visceral, kind of an oddie body experience. Like, oh, I remember when that happened. That's how I felt with Sinners. I've never been to Mississippi, but when I watched the scenes in the movie, y'all, it felt like I was outside of myself. It's a disassociative. It was like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. It was literally like somebody was filming my hometown. Never been to Mississippi. Did not grow up in the country. I grew up in Michigan. I live in the city. It was literally like somebody had took me back to my old school, and I was walking around going, oh yeah, that's my old locker. That's the lunch I used to eat. And you know how you had that feeling? That's the feeling I had with Sinners. The best way I can describe it. It was like somebody was showing me something that I had already seen and been and lived. Oh, I used to live in a house that looked like that. Oh, that's the root word cabin. Never been to Mississippi. So that was my freak out experience. So some of this movie had freaked me out, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. So I don't know, maybe if somebody can explain it. I need some help. Somebody call somebody, the priest, the preacher. I don't know. But I thank you for listening. And again, I'm still trying to put my thoughts into cohesionness. And so, but go see the movie though. Go see it. It's worth it. It's so worth it. I want my kids to see it when they get a little older. It's some grown folk stuff in it, but I want my kids to see it.